Death or Prison, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. Let's join Johnny Branham, Laz Lopez, and Freddie Morales in the episode entitled Cheese Sticks and Ankle Bracelets.
Hello and welcome to the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. I am Johnny Branham. To my right, I have Mr. Laz Lopez, and to my left, we have Mr. Freddie Morales. And today, we have a guest who has an interesting story. Served 29 years in the Department of Corrections.
Actually, it was 29 years, 3 months, and 9 days.
Okay.
Yes.
Can't take that from him.
Yeah, we don't want to leave that part out.
So where are you from, Freddie?
I am originally from Miami-Dade.
Miami-Dade. And what was it like growing up there in Miami-Dade?
Well, I grew up in Victory Homes, which is a drug-infested neighborhood, violent. I was there like 5, 6 years old. So it was more like a survival arena more than anything. So I practically started using like marijuana at an early age when I was like 7 years old. Wow. And drinking MD 2020 when I was like 8 years old. And started stealing candy out of the stores. And from there, I started getting into a lot of trouble during the time that I was in elementary. My mom, she practically like worked in a bar, tried to do the best that she could to help other children. There was 6 of us. I'm the, what they call the knee baby, the 5th child of the 6. So 4 of us practically grew up together. The other brother, Joseph, he was given to his auntie on his father's side. And my brother Tony, he was given to his grandma on his father's side.
To my understanding, I can recall your situation growing up without a father. There was some issues with that. Explain that father issue, that father situation.
I think what really was mind-boggling to me was how that my other siblings had a relationship with their father, but I didn't have that relationship with my father. So I didn't know who my father was. And my brothers and sisters, they were a little bit older than me. And so what they would, they would go hang out with their friends. So I was the loose cannon, just kind of like out there, started getting myself into trouble. So it affected me as I reflect back. Again, I understand the importance of the father figure in the family. So as I journeyed to try to figure out who my father was, it kind of like took a toll on me. I would go to school and I would see kids with their father, but I never knew who my father was. So I became more of a troubled child.
But there was a confusion there that the reason why it was trying to keep it on the down low who he was. What confusion was that?
Well, the confusion basically was that it was a close relative, and to that was my dad, and so my mom didn't want that to be brought forth, and so that kind of created a dilemma, and because it was within the family, so. But I would hear things that would tell me like, hey, this is your dad, or, and stuff like that. But as a child, you really can't, that doesn't register, And, but as I began to grow up and got to a certain age, I started understanding why these things were being said. But at that time, particularly, it was I was in the dark about it.
It was taboo, yeah.
Yeah, there was some treatment that kind of made me feel as though that I was, but that's where all the confusion basically came in at. I started experiencing going to juvenile at the age about like 9, 10 years old. I was already like breaking into cars and, breaking into houses and things like that and stealing bikes. So
Was there any time that you were afraid? I can't even fathom at 9 or 10, being, arrested or being detained. But was there any fear?
Well, when you grow up in a surviving environment, it's almost like you're prepared for whatever it is. So it's not a sense of fear. It's a sense of this is part of life. This is how it goes. You're surviving, and so it's by whatever means necessary. And that was the concept that I had during that time, even though it was not a healthy concept, but it was to me because of the environment. And when the environment, it was conducive to what was going on. So I kind of like just didn't know any other way. Those were the learned behaviors that I received in my childhood growing up.
Did your family know any of this was going on?
Well, they would later find out that these things were going on. My mom was practically busy with work at the bar. And so that would give us a lot of free time to do a lot of things. She tried to do the best that she could in helping me out and providing. I think that her absence kind of gave me a lot of free time to do a lot of things. So yeah, they knew I was getting in trouble, but she was unable to kind of like constrain me from just doing things. Because of her position, my brothers and them would try to kind of like steer me in the right direction, but they were preoccupied with their childhood, them growing up, their friends, and so since I was younger than them, I kind of like I didn't fit in their category. My sisters, they had their boyfriends, and they were experiencing life as well. So
basically, you had no direction, no mentorship. You found it in the street. You found it in your friends and your homeboys and your home team. That's where you basically found secure and security and even probably family.
Correct. That's as I went on that journey there, I found fulfillment and just trying to be my own man. At a very young age, I remember my mom telling me that, you're a man. I remember when I was like 5, 6 years old. And so I actually, in my own mind, thought I was a man and that I could handle these responsibilities. But little did I know, I was far from being a man, and that I was actually a child who had not experienced what manhood looks like just yet at that time. And so it was pretty complicated to try to be a man when you're really a child. So I feel like during that time, it was my childhood was being stolen. So, and that's as I reflect on it now. But it was like, hurry up and grow up, because you're going to have responsibilities to take on. But the problem that I found with that was that I was not being offered the guidance or the direction to appropriate that. So that made it difficult for me. I didn't have nobody to like mentor me through the process. So even though I was trying to be a man, I had no tools in my box to execute that. And again, I was a child.
And as you were mentioning before, you would steal from like the stores, your candy and your whatever, the toys. But then you started to progress and you went to GTA, Grand Theft Auto. And how did that progress? How did that continue to go? And where did that escalate to?
Well, eventually it went from stealing bikes, breaking into houses. After breaking into houses, doing home invasions, kidnapping, robberies. There was an era what we call the Rolex bandits. And so we went on those venges, and what we did was basically rob individuals for Rolexes. That was like a lot of money for us who grew up within the projects or within our neighborhood.
Well, how old were you when you first picked up a pistol, a gun?
I was like 14, somewhere 13, 14 years old. I recall what's unique about what I'm seeing in today's age, with the problem with the school shootings and stuff like that. I remember I had problems in school when I was in elementary school, and I picked up a gun, and because of the problems that I was having with the guys over there in our school, and I went to the school, and I was waiting for them, and I kind of like shot at the air to kind of like just scare them and ran off. But it was, and then when I see the things that are happening now, I was like, wow, I could kind of relate to that, not to the degree that I see it now, but any little thing, because of my nature of violence and what I grew up around, kind of like led me to understand that this is the way you handle situations. And I eventually discovered that was not correct.
When was the first time you went to juvenile again, you said?
I was at the age of 9, between 9 and 10.
What was that for?
That was for burglary, some cars. Broke into about like 14 cars. So they had me for burglary with that. Then one was a grand theft. Then eventually I went to DeSoto Start Center and progressed. Eventually I ended up in Okeechobee State School, which that's like a higher level prison during that time. And from there, they direct filed me eventually to what it was, Dade County Jail, at the age of 16.
That's at the 9th floor, I think?
That's the 10th floor back
10th
then.
Floor. Okay.
Yeah. It's not the 10th floor that it is now.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
When you say direct file, what does that mean?
Direct file deals with whenever you are a juvenile and now you're being charged as an adult.
And what age were you again?
And I was 16 years old.
I pause there for a second because there are a lot of youth that believe that it can't happen to me. They think that I'm going to continue to get slaps on the wrist. So at 16, you were direct filed from juvenile status to an adult prison.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you can recall, what was the highest, like if a highlight of violence that you experienced when you went to juvenile?
Well, I recall one time when there was a situation where one guy jumped on one of the guys that were hanging out with me, and that became a riot, and it ignited, and so therefore we were all fighting inside the unit, and the social workers there, they put us all back in the cell, and then they brought us out to try to like quell the situation. And what happened there was, when they brought us out, one word was said, and it was all over again. Everybody's fighting again. So that didn't work. And so that was a reality. Things happen, people get hurt, and over the most simplest things that you wouldn't even imagine. You see it, and people fight for the most minimal thing.
Now, considering what you're facing, what your experience from your childhood, your upbringing, everything that's involved, did you really have choice? Do you have many choices or options?
Well, I think we all have a choice. The thing is do you have the mindset to take on those choices? I think that my mindset was not prepared. I think I was already lost along the way. And so it was kind of difficult for me to make good choices. That's what I found in my life, because opportunities were afforded to me. I just didn't know how to execute those opportunities.
Yeah, like this is the hand that I was dealt, And so you get to this position, like the name of this podcast, Death or Prison. That was like more vivid to you than going off to college or having a family, the barbecues, the baseball games.
For sure. I mean, in certain family and healthy family versus toxic families, parents prepare for the future of the children. In this case, there was no preparation for a future. There was more of a surviving in the atmosphere that we lived in. So the environment was conducive more to the violence than it was to the future, a brighter future. So even if it was, the intent to probably prepare for a better future, lack of education, my mom, I think she perhaps maybe went to the 3rd grade. And so as meaningful as she would have been to want me to go to education, she didn't have the preparation to help me if I came home and needed some help with some test or something like that. So that was the issues that, I found also. We were not sitting at the table and talking or discussing about, how do you deal with conflicts or problems? How do you address these issues of life, And so I had those difficulties as well.
We have mentioned earlier that he did 29 years. And again, we always like to inform the audience that we understand that this was not it was an injustice that was made. I mean, you were a violent person. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say that. That's
correct.
I
mean, if you're a victim of circumstance, if you were molded and shaped into this, like Johnny asked, were you scared? You said no, because when you're raised in this type of environment, that's how you molded into. And as things progressed, you graduated from juvenile now you're going to prison. How was that experience?
I like to compare that to something that Danny Marrero shared with me when he entered into Rayford Prison. He said, have you ever gone into a dark room, and when you're in that dark room, you can't walk around too much because it's a new environment. But after you're in that dark room for a while, you get adjusted to it, then you start walking around. And so my experience was, you walk into these places, there's a moment where, there's a new environment. And so you start figuring out how to move around. And before you know it, one of the major problems happens is that oftentimes is that the guys become institutionalized. They get so involved in surviving within the prison that they forget to make preparation for the future of leaving that prison and entering into society to deal with real life issues.
What was going through your mind when you know that there point of no return, I'm going to prison?
Well, and I was discussing this with Pastor Lazaro here, and we was talking about how when I was in the county jail, and I was like, I'm going to prison. I'm going for the rest of my life, and I'm probably never going to ever get out of prison. So as I waited to go to prison, I was a houseman on the 4th floor in Dade County Jail. And so the housemen are not like the housemen now, but the housemen back then, you kind of like ran the phone. You had your little clique, and we were like a team together to keep the cell. So it was like a big thing for you to be a houseman.
What's a clique?
A clique is a group of men, like, they're brothers in a sense where they kind of got each other's back. They watch out, and if we take care of it, we run the cell. You come in, you get in the shower. If you don't get in the shower, we bang you up and send you up out of there. If you don't want to comply with what we're doing when the floor is closed and stuff like that, and we're getting the guys to clean up, and so we kind of like put it on you and get you out of there, which, was our way to weave out those people who was not going to comply.
So for clarity, the housemen basically are the ones that take care of the housekeeping. They make sure that the place is clean, swept, all of those things, sanitized and things like that.
Yeah, but there's also some extortion involved as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because they, once you have a substantial amount of guys against you on chicken day, if they want to put down, you better give up that chicken.
They're the ones that pass out the food. For everybody listening and watching, they're the ones that take care of the food.
Yeah.
They can make sure you get a little bit more on your tray, or you might not get a tray at all. So
Yeah, that's basically what it is with dealing with that. But it was like a macho thing. You know, if you got the cell, it's like the guys that come in that want to take over the cells.
And that's what you were going to tell us, right?
Yeah, and that's the point that I was getting at. And so while I was there as the houseman, there was another guy who had been to Rayford. He was an old school guy. I was young at that time. And so he kind of started pouring poison into the minds and the heart of the young guys that was around him to overtake the cell. So I kept hearing it for a while. And eventually, I just got fed up with it. I was already sentenced to 3 life sentences, and I was just basically waiting to go to prison. And I just got up one day, I packed up my stuff. I got tired of hearing that, and I got these razor blades. I put them together and basically attacked this guy.
The razor blades, you got them from the...
Okay, the razor blades, here's what I got them from. I don't know if you guys remember, there's like this little cookie, crackers and cheese. They had like a little red stick on it.
That you could spread the cheese on the cracker.
Yeah. Back then, they used to sell us pencil sharpeners. So I took the blades off of the pencil sharpener and put it on that little plastic, that little red plastic. Then I'll make a little loop with a little string on it, and I'll use it as a cutting device. And so what I did is I was frustrated at that time because I was tired of hearing, and plus I was dealing with my issues about the 3 life sentences. So I just got up and went over there and just started cutting on a dude. First hit him in the neck, and he fell back and just started cutting from the top to the bottom of his feet. They eventually charged me for that, and gave me a 15 years that ran concurrent with my 3 life sentences. Originally, they charged me with attempted murder, and when I took the plea, it was dropped down to aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. So, you know, that experience taught me something, and that was that as much as I felt that, you know, I was a houseman and you know, that cell was mine, I realized that that cell wasn't mine, that I was fighting for all the wrong things, and I was getting involved and caught up in things that I shouldn't have been getting caught up in. And that gets back to the institutionalized mentality. You get caught up in the web, and you're starting to live to get a name, or you're starting to live to get this fame and glory, you know, that your name would ring bells throughout the prison system. So, you know, and my name began to ring behind that. And, you know, oftentimes we like that glory, we like that recognition. And, but that's that I realized.
Fable.
Yeah. Yeah, I realized that, you know what? That's not a good report, you know. Through time, I began to discover those things. At that time, I didn't understand that.
We were talking about that on another segment about respect and how important it is in prison and how institutionalized you can become behind that. You mentioned that you learned that later on, but in the beginning, was that something you were seeking after, that respect, that recognition to be feared?
I don't think it was me seeking to be feared. It was just part of my nature of survival. That was the life that I lived. And if I was going to be living for such a long time within the prison system, I didn't want that to dissolve itself.
Was this bid the first time that you went to prison, or you were already in prison before?
The first time I went to prison was when I was direct filed for a burglary. That was a house burglary.
How much time did you do that?
They gave me 2 years and a half for that.
What'd you do that time?
I started that time in Indian River, and then from there I went to Beckman Hall's Work Release Center, and from there I ended up in Sumter Correction Institution. And Sumter was called back then the Baby Rock, because the people that were at the Rock, they were pouring them into what it is Sumter Correction Institution. So it was Sumter was like a gladiator school,
Right.
you know, and it was a violent environment.
How much time were you out before you got in trouble again?
I got out. I think I was out like 6 months before I got into trouble. Got in trouble again. Again, the lack of direction. What I found in the prison system that happens oftentimes is they get you through the prison system. They get you into the work camps and into the work release. And sometimes that's awesome for me that wants to get out, but it doesn't sometimes afford some of the guys to like really regroup, rethink, get into some transitional program, offer them. That's during that time.
No vocationals, no. Yeah, I mean, really, rehabilitation's out the window.
Exactly. So it's more like a labor or workforce thing to get certain things done through DOC or whatever, stuff like that. I mean, DOT. So what I discovered that it's like you rush through the prison system to be rushed back out into society without being prepared to encounter society with the tools that you need to confront some of the problems that you're going to deal with. And I think that that's what was happening with me. I'll get out. So during the time that I was in, I was still smoking weed. I was still finding ways to get high anyway. I was still in my criminal mentality, you know, doing all these things. And so I really was not learning much if I didn't take the initiative to do. And not only if I did take the initiative, there was not much to be offered. Because when you're dealing with work camps and stuff like that, they're just thinking about, how do we get this guy to go to work? You know? And I'm thinking about, well, I like to get to go to work because I probably could get me some drugs. I probably can go, you know, get me something to drink and do things, or get out and just, you know, see society. But I'm still seeing society from a criminal mind. I'm not seeing it society in a different way.
You did 2.5 years. You were how old when you did that bid, when you started?
That's the one that I was 16 years old.
16. So you get out at 18. So you, in those 2 years, what you did, how long then?
I probably did like 16 months or less, 15, somewhere around there.
So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I'm trying to calculate. You go in at 16. You get out maybe 17 and a half.
Yeah, that's probably.
And then 6 months after that.
Correct.
You get this kidnapping.
Right.
Robbery that you're facing life with.
Not this one.
Not that one.
This is, the next one is where I get 12 years for, which was armed robbery, armed burglary, armed kidnap. And so here again, I get a 12-year sentence. They giving all this gang time out, and I end up out in 2.5 years.
Okay.
Wow.
So...
Yeah, because back then it was 65% plus.
I just got to interject. I went in at the wrong time. I got 17 years and did 14 and a half. You did 12. You had 12 and did 2. So
did 2, yeah.
Just interjecting.
Yeah. So, and that's what happened. Eventually, they start tightening up, and that's where they started coming with the 85% because they felt like, man, we're breeding a bunch of, you know, guys. So. I don't know if this is beeping.
Just pause there for a second.
Yes. Brace your ankles, stay close to peace. Let me see, because I gotta move.
Watch your headphone. This is very important.
I gotta move. Yeah. I gotta go outside, so it'll. Yep, I'll help you. Yep.
Can't violate that. He's on life parole.
Yeah.
He can't play with it.
Yeah.
Well.
So was that a cell phone that went off? Beep. What was that?
No, that was not a cell phone. That's the ankle monitor that I have. It vibrated, and I have also this other piece that goes along with it, which when the ankle bracelet vibrates, it's telling me to get this device as close as possible.
The reason why they have that on you, that monitor, is so that satellite knows exactly where you are.
And that's correct. And I'll have it on for a year, and then eventually it'll take it off.
How many days have you been out?
I've been out approximately 8 days now. And, I was talking to Sister Maggie. You remember Sister
Yes.
Maggie? She runs the Matthews 25
Yes.
program. And what was interesting, she went down the line of my phone number, and she found all these 8s, and she was explaining to me that the 8 was a sign of a new beginning.
Yes.
And so here I am on the 8th day. It's not the old Freddie that's before you, but it's the new Freddie. And I share with Ken concerning what I read this morning, and I read 2 Corinthians chapter 5:17. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Behold, old things have passed and were made new. And so as I reflect on that, I see a new beginning here. And I realize that for this new beginning, there has to be a transplant of heart. And that's something that God always wanted to do in the life of man, was to change the heart of man so that they can have that personal relationship with him. And life gets beautiful when we do that. And I share with him also with Ken, concerning, if you do good and seek the peace of the land, you shall eat the fruit. And so I'm now reaping those benefits because I was a slave to a lot of lawlessness. And when my heart was changed, my mind was changed, and my whole life was regenerated. And so now things I can see clearly now. And I'm just so grateful that for what God has done and is doing and will do and continue to do in my life.
Now you say that you're reaping, and when we're looking at you were sowing for the last 29 years while you were incarcerated. Almost, I would say at least 27 or 26 of those years you were sowing into the kingdom. And so now is when you're reaping a long time after, 8 days only out of prison and on a monitor where they are supervising you exactly anywhere and everywhere you go. If you separate your ankle bracelet from the monitor, you can violate and they're no longer tracking you, and that can cause you to go back to prison for the rest of your life.
That's correct.
And so this is a situation you're free now, but you're still supervised and you're being monitored. And so it's a difficult task, but I know, because I know your character, I know the new Freddie, and I know with God in you, all things are possible, and you'll be able to get through this whole year with that. We were talking about how now you are now sentenced to 12 years. After that first bid, you got out, you were 6 months out, you came back. Now you did, because of the gain time, and we talked about, they were giving 65%, and so you only had to do 2 years and something.
That's right. And so I did the 2 years and a half. I got out. I had good intentions. I had gotten married with who is now my ex-wife, Lisa. And though my intentions were good, I lacked a lot of preparation. And one of my major problems that I had, and I share this with you, was I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to go get help. I know that I needed help. And I recall telling her one time, and I said, I think I need to go to church because I see I'm about to go back to prison. So I realized that though I needed that help, I didn't know how to go get it. And I just continued on in my criminal behavior where there was many situations that indicated, you're in a red zone, Freddie. You're in a red zone. And that was, as I reflect upon it, I had wished at that time that I had got the help. But back to what you were saying earlier, I was, throughout like 26 years, 27 years, I had been sowing into the kingdom. What I thank God for those years because I realized had I rushed out of prison like I've rushed out of prison before, I probably wouldn't be so grateful. I probably wouldn't have a change of heart. I probably wouldn't be the person that God has shaped me and molded me to be. I like to think of my life as, in Jeremiah chapter 18, it says, concerning the potter and the clay. And so he is the potter, we are the clay, shape us and mold us, because this is what he do. He specializes in changing lives and changing heart. And so now God is using us as instruments to do the same thing as well.
When you said you were in a red zone, that you noticed that, hey, you're going back to prison. If you're listening and you're listening to the podcast today and you feel that you're in a red zone, that's why we're here today.
What you said ministered to me, and I remember being in the same exact position on a fort doing 17 years. And of course, with gang time, it's 14 and a half, 6 years in, and I'm crying out to God that I'm ready to go. Lord, I've learned my lesson. I'm ready to leave this situation. I'm watching my daughters grow up through pictures. I'm watching my mother, my dad get older. I want to go home. I don't want to do another 8, 9, 10 years in this place. I get it. I'm saved. I'm born again. And I will never forget the words that he told me. He said, Johnny, I'm not going to change your situation. I'm just going to change the way that you deal with it. And so the growth for me came from going through. He says, I'm not going to remove you from it. Paul sought the Lord 3 times. And he said, if it were possible for this thorn to be removed, remove it. And God basically told me, I'm not going to remove this thorn because this thorn is working far more than you could ever imagine, but you can't really realize it right now. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that going through. And so if you're watching and you're going through some tough times don't necessarily mean you're inside of a prison bars. Tough times can mean that you're trying to turn your life around. If you're a youth and you're having to turn your life around right now and your parents or your mentors, your people are taking you through some tough challenges, stick with it. Go through it. It's worth it. We gain strength from doing the work. And so this has been the Death or Prison podcast brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. But what do we say each week, fellas? We would like for them to choose life.
Looking for a welcoming church? Connect at leanonmeusa.org. Listen next week to part 2 of our interview with Freddie Morales, the story of a walking time bomb. Death or Prison is a production of leanonmeusa.org. Copyright 2020. Death or Prison is offered for information only and is not intended as legal advice. Thank you for listening.
I can change the world. Feed one, teach one boy and girl. Maybe we can change the world.